candid conversations, unfiltered opinions, and humor with Abeg Vex Podcast.
Welcome to an episode about books and being an author and life's journey. So today, I am convinced somebody's going to learn something very valuable. I have the honor of having with us today Beth Pellino-Dudzic. Beth, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I know we're going to have fun and enjoy this.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it. So, Beth, you're an author, and we're going to talk about your book and the characters within your book. So, what led you to wanting to write a book? What led you to wanting to develop a character and put a story out there?
Well, it's funny. The book is about rock and roll and the club scene that was in New York. And I was part of that. And so if we start there, right? So then I was part of that. So for 25 years, I had this story in my head, and legit, I had it in my head, and it would come in little snippets. And it was sort of like a black and white movie, and it would be this piece, that piece, whatever. And during the 25 years, I raised 3 daughters and I became a single mother. So, the story was still there in my head. I actually have 3 other stories that I said, you can't come out yet. You got to stay on the shelf. So I was clean, and this is legitimately what happened. And I did want to be a singer back in the day. And when you're younger, you have more fear of, am I gonna be good? Am I pretty enough? Because that's what women had to deal with, right? You had to look a certain way. So I backed off of it, feeling that, I'm not going to be able to do that. All my friends were musicians and people in record companies, and I've met many rock stars and people around that. But then there comes a time, and I just had finished school, and it was business administration, right? It had nothing to do with music, nothing to do with acting, which was another thing I wanted to do. I felt that there was a force in me, and I needed to get that out, and fear kept me from doing that. So what I did was I went to work in a big accounting firm, and I had a great job, and the music part started to wane a little bit, because then my job, here I am out of school, living, going to work in Manhattan and commuting into the city. So everything was like fun. It was a fun time to be working in Manhattan. So go back that I have this story in my head for 25 years, and it started coming at me like a lot. And one day, this is God's truth, I was cleaning my house, because I'm a little bit of an OCD freak about cleaning my house. And the stories started to come together. Like before, the characters didn't have names. It was just like this and this. And I went into the shower, I turned it on, and all of a sudden, the story, as the water's hitting me, is running through me. Like, this is the character's name. This is where and I was like, no, I have to write it. And I believe that this was my time. Like, your creativeness, if you're that kind of person and you tamp it down, right? You say, I'm not going to be a singer. I'm not going to act. I'm going to raise 3 children, and you tamp it down, but it does come out in other ways. I used to have, and I lived in Hawaii. That's where my daughters were born, and always wanted to come back to New York, which I eventually did, but I had to go through a divorce to do that. And that's a whole nother women's thing of going through a divorce with children. It's so much different with children. But I was able to get back to New York. I got a job at IBM as a single mother, but for me, the creativeness came out, and I gave the best parties. People always wanted to come to my parties. It was like a thing in Honolulu. And so my creativity went to that, to planning parties and doing that, but it was still there. So when it came through me, I said, my gosh, I got to write this now. And I got my old laptop, which was, I was hoping that the story would stay in there. And then I got my new computer and I just wrote and wrote and wrote. And it was like, as I was writing, this story was starting to roll and take form. And I knew exactly where I was going with the characters and how I wanted it to be. And because it starts in New York, there is a little bit of the New York banter that we have. And the female character, and I don't mind saying this, and I've said it many times, is me to a certain extent, right? Now, I have books 3, 4, and 5 written, and I'm working on book 6. And that was interesting how that happened. So I know where the story is going to go. And the female character is an Italian girl from Long Island. Well, I didn't grow up in Long Island, but I was an Italian girl who grew up in Westchester, which is right by New York City. And there's nuances of being in an Italian family. And so there's a lot of swearing that goes on because that's what happens. And her father is, as we say, very connected as an Italian family. They're very wealthy. My father was connected, but it's something you never talk about in your family. It's just, it's there and you don't talk about it. So there are certain things with that nuance that I put in the book because I can speak to that and I could speak to the New York club scene. So the book I started probably about a year ago, started writing it and I haven't stopped. And I thought it was one book. So then I went to look, and for anybody who's interested in being an author and self-publishing, a lot of people think, Amazon will take your book. Amazon does not. You can upload your book on Amazon, but Amazon doesn't take new authors. So they come to you. You can go to them to download your book. But in that process, what you need to know is, do you want your book to be a real book for people to buy and be a book that people want to read, or is it a vanity piece? Some people just want to say, hey, yeah, I published a book. So yeah, go ahead, upload it onto Amazon. But I knew I needed things like a publishing consultant. I looked at the self-publishing aspect and I dealt with 2 really bad people. And I found this site called the Alliance of Self-Publishers, which if anybody wants to do that, please, that's the avenue to go on. And what they do is they rate all the self-publishing, and there's quite a bit, but there was only like 6 or 7 that had a green light. Everybody was yellow, and there were a lot of red lights, which is like, stay away from them. And I dealt with 2 of them. So I interviewed all the people that were green, and I finally found my publishing consultant. And she went through the same thing as I did with one of the bad companies. And what she does is she helped me put together a team. And she's phenomenal when it comes to, like, I did buy my ISBN numbers, copyrighted, that I can do, but she kind of pulls it all together. And I interviewed editors because, believe it or not, you need an editor. Like I said, you can upload your book on Amazon, but it's not a quality product. So you, as an author, you want your book to be at the highest standard if you want people to read it and take you seriously. So I interviewed 3 editors, and the female editor got my book, which I thought was one book. And she said, I identify with the character. I know where you're going with it. I love it. And so she started to be on the team. Then I interviewed people who do book covers and, believe it or not, the artwork and the book layout. And the woman who I have is a phenomenal artist, and she's done thousands of book covers. So she was very excited to do my series, and her work is phenomenal. She does my website. She does my book layout. So boom, I have my editor. I have my artist who does a bunch of things. Then I needed, and this is the most important thing that people need to know, is marketing your book. And that's where the big money comes in. And I am having weekly meetings with my marketing person. And here's the good thing is that my marketing person, my publishing consultant, and my artist have worked together on several projects. So when I brought them all together, it was like a happy, we all collaborate with each other. And, I feel I do have the A team. My publishing consultant said, you got the A team, girl. Oh, let's go. So when my editor looked at my book, she said, this is 2 books. This is not 1 book. And the name that I came up with, they said, it sounds like a self-help book. So I said, all right. So we collaborated. And the series is the Perfection Saga, but it's 6 books and every book has a different name. Every book will be like playing. The first one is playing hard. The second one is playing high. And the third one is playing rough. I know the name of the 4th one, but so we collaborated on that and we're like, okay, let's do it this way. So I know that when my books are out there, they've been done and I've created that with these people. And it is a lot of money. I mean, you do have to spend a lot of money if you want a good product. If, like I said, if you just want to say, hey, I published a book, go upload it on Amazon. And I have a proofreader. And she's kind of important because she tracks my books from book to book and she lists all the name of the characters and, how they're related. Because sometimes I forget, if you're writing book 5, sometimes you forget, well, who was the person in book 1? She has it all down. And she keeps me to my timeline because I'm going from the mid-1970s to present time. So there were things like caller ID. And she said, caller ID didn't come out yet. And I was like, oh, okay, well, we've got to change that. So those people are important to keep you where you need to be. And because I look at this series as something that will blow up and I just, book 3 is going to come out soon. And like I said, book 4 and book 5 are already written. So I leave you in a cliffhanger with every book. And my desire is every 4 to 6 months, get the next book out. Because if I'm leaving you in a cliffhanger, you're going to want the next book. You don't want to wait. I mean, some people say, a year. No. That's how you lose people. You want them to be engaged and you want them to want that next book. So that's my plan. So yeah, the female character, very strong. And she's very strong in the way she sees her band. There's a whole story about how it's put together. And she falls madly in love with a lead singer from another band. And it was like an immediate attraction, fall in love, like boom, right away. It was that electricity. So as the story goes on, even though she's tough as nails and when she's on stage, she commands it, right? She owns it. But her Achilles heel is the love that she has for this man. And so the story goes through that. And I also take the music industry from the 70s and bring it to today. And there was a lot of changes in the music industry. Back in the day, a record company would come see bands that were playing in the clubs. And if they liked you and if you had original music, which is very important, they would say, okay, we'd like to do a demo with you. And just because you do the demo doesn't mean they're going to sign you. But say you get signed, then the record company dictates to you, okay, we need 5 albums out of you. Like, that's what they did. And it was sort of do the music, go out on tour, to promote it and promote. And then you go back to the studio and then it's like, okay, you need to do album number 2. And it was very much like that. And I don't know if you remember Prince when he wrote Slave on his face.
Yeah.
Was because the record company and that man had like music in a vault someplace that was never released, but he was owned by the music company and he was told, okay, put out the next album. And so, yes, they owned you to a certain point. And then the music industry started to change once we got MTV. And MTV opened the door for a lot of bands that maybe wouldn't have made it, but they did a video. And if your video got played on MTV, I mean, that was gold because then they played it. You know, if you were on their rotation, they would play you like every hour and people were like, I gotta get it. And they used to have, I don't know if you remember TRL.
Yeah.
And so then they would interview you and people would be like, oh, this band is interesting. That's one thing my daughters were like, Mom, can we go down and go to TRL? And I was like, maybe. So music for me was always very important. And it was a running theme through my life. My parents were teenagers when I'm the oldest and I had a brother very close in age to me. And then there was like this gap and my other 2 brothers came. But my parents were very much into music and my father was into his doo-wop music. So I grew up with that, which we hated. You know, it was like, Daddy, please change. But now I have a love for that music because, you know, there were so many, and I'm not talking Elvis Presley. My father liked the African-American doo-wop bands. That was, to him, that was the music that you listened to. And I grew up with that. And I also grew up with the Beatles and the British invasion, which was, you know, great. So music was always played in my house. I used to love the Ronettes and all the women songs. And it's funny because when you listen to them, it's all about, you know, I want him to love me like I need him. And so for women, we've changed that. Like we don't need, you know, it was all about, oh, you know, I need this man to fall in love with me. And now it's like women are like, no, I don't need that. I need to be me. And that was great to see that progression. So I was into music from, I would say like 3 or 4 years old, just listening to that and then growing with the music. And I always say the Beatles don't count as the Beatles are their own entity and they started everything that is today. Now, are there nuances? You had the Zeppelins and the Pink Floyds and all, and I listened to all of it and I grew with the music. And as a mother, you know, I was playing this music and I indoctrinated my daughters to that music. So they had a very, very early age. They were introduced to a lot of that music because I was playing it in the car or I was telling them about it. And they are, you know, music lovers. They kind of diverted, but they always went back to, for my oldest daughter, it was the grunge era, which I was totally into the grunge era. And there was a couple of bands in town and she wanted to see Korn, which was one of those, you know what I'm saying? And we were back in New York and I said, okay, I'll get tickets. So I took my 3 daughters. I think my youngest was about 8 years old. And I took them to see Korn. And it was great. I mean, the concert was great. And, you know, my middle daughter is always we used to call her the sheriff. And she's like, Mom, there's people smoking pot all around us. And I said, we're at a concert. I said, people are going to do that. I said, just ignore it. This is what happens at concerts.
What did she think about the mosh pits?
Well, we weren't in the mosh pits. We had seats. And I would never, I swear when that thing all started, I said, I would never I would never get general admission and be on the floor. I think my oldest daughter went to a few concerts where there were mosh pits, but that era was very male dominated, that like the mosh pit, the angry youth guys. And of course, at the same time was Girls Gone Wild, which was like so sexist. And so I hated that. And I would tell my daughters, I don't ever want to see your face on any of that because it's degrading. And so you mesh those two together and it created something that I didn't like in music, but that's what was going on. I always said, we are sitting in a seat. I'm going to enjoy the music that way. And we did. And yeah, they went to other concerts without me, but I don't remember any of them coming back from a concert saying, oh my God, Mom, I was almost trampled on, because that's the kind of stuff that went on with that. And then we got away from it. Thank goodness. And there's so many bands that were post-grunge. And I do listen to some of them. And it was sort of like we had, metal and we had alternative. And then, so then we started classifying music. I listened to all of it to a certain extent. So as I said, so music for me, like when I wake up in the morning, I turn on Spotify and I do my house cleaning to music. And I did create a playlist in every one of my books. So if we go back to my books, it is a series and there's this strong female character who falls in love with this guy. And it's about their journey, and her cousin, the band that she creates is with her cousin and they're very close. So he's part of the journey too. And then I introduce other characters, and book one, I'm just laying everything out for you and telling you, like, this is the way the music business is. And, there are some things that happen that kind of derail it, but then brings it back. And she's the reason that they're always bringing it back with her cousin, who is totally, the band is the most important thing. And in book two, which is called Playing High, you can imagine what that is about. And it is true of that era and going out and touring and being part of, if you're the opening act for a bigger band, you're all on a plane and, there's everything that you want on that plane. And I go into that and how there's pitfalls, and I think it's a spicy romance. So I will say that I don't hold back. And I know women like to read this. I don't hold back on the sexual content, but I do it very, what I would say, women friendly, where it's how a woman wants to read about a love scene. It's not raunchy. It's not, erotic. It's about two people who are in love. So it's not really dirty, but it's sort of graphic. So that happens throughout the books too. The pitfalls are important, and it kind of derails things for the band again. And I think with a good romance, and I do have two antagonists in the book and how she deals with them. And trust me, the Italian girl from New York comes out on one of the antagonists. And so, yeah, she will do anything to defend her love. And if you want to say that is her Achilles heel, it is. He is, her life. And he also, and I go into it a little bit, but it gets really heavy in book 3 and 4. There's a reason why he is madly in love with her. And it's because of things that happened to him in his past. So he looks at her as his protector, and she does protect him. But I don't want to say it's a dysfunctional relationship. It's the love is the most important thing about it.
So if she's protecting him, who's protecting her?
She don't need anybody to protect her, okay?
Mistake women make, because we consistently pour from an empty cup. we consistently are that soft place for everybody else to land. And we don't quite think of ourselves until things start falling apart.
Yes. And I love how you said a soft place to land, because just to step away from the books a little, I have 3 adult daughters, and I've always told them, and I have a very big house, and I said, if anything goes wrong, or, sometimes life kicks you, you always can come home, wherever my home is, because I'm not in New York anymore. I said, wherever mom is, that's your safe place. That's your soft place to land. And if you need to come home, there's no shame in it. I mean, I'm your soft place. So I love that you said that, because I always tell my daughters, this is your soft place to land. If things go wrong, you can always come home. And, they're like, okay, mom, but I don't think I'm going to do that. But you never know what life throws at you. So I just always put that out there to them, that, soft space.
I think that's great, because it's insurance in a sense. You don't always need insurance, but you pay into it, don't you? Right? So they're not planning to come back home, because from a child's perspective, they don't want to bother their parent, right? But it feels good to know that you have that support. It feels good to know that you have that insurance. So good on you, Beth, for your daughter. I feel that is so great that your daughters have that insurance that they don't plan on using, but you never know in life.
Exactly. And, I've met other people who, when I said, of course, if they need to come home, they need to come home. And they're like, "Oh, you want them to come?" I said, if they need to, yes. Because I know people who won't do that. And I don't understand as a mother how you turn away your child, no matter how old they are. My father, when he was alive, he was, as I said, he was a wise guy. So I always knew that I was protected in a different way. And my father would always say, if somebody's bothering you, you let me know. And he actually did that once from a boyfriend that was kind of abusive. And my father took care of that along with other people. And he would tell my daughters, they were young, and he would say, if anybody gives you anything, you come and tell grandpa. And it was sort of this feeling that when my father was alive, I knew no matter what, he would take care of whatever it is that I needed to take care of. And then, he got sick, and I ended up with, my mother was there, of course, but I was the one who spent 4 months down in Florida while he was, getting chemo treatments and everything. And, at least I had that time with him. Like, I gave him back what he always gave to me, which was, don't worry about anything. I'll fix it.
There's no greater love than that. And I think sometimes, I don't know whether all parents realize this or not, but especially for dads and their daughters, that is a mark that nobody can touch or even attempt to raise. And you walked around like, you ruled, right? Because you had this, support and this protection behind you that nothing and nobody can touch you. It allowed you to be yourself. So that is what that love does. That is what having that level of security and support does, especially for a girl child, to have their father in their lives and to also have a presence father that assures you that nobody can touch you. Just let me know and I'll take care of it. There's nothing more beautiful than that. And, that was a blessing you had, Beth.
Yes, it was a blessing. Thank you. And I actually, when he passed and we knew it was an eventual thing, I felt like an orphan, even though my mother is, as a matter of fact, my mother moved down to where I am. And so now I'm kind of, even though there are times when I'm just like, oh my God, I'm the only girl and I got her, and she's physically strong and everything. So now I'm taking care of her from the standpoint of she doesn't drive. So it's like taking her shopping or, sometimes just getting her out of the house because she can't really go anywhere unless I take her. So, we lost my brother who was closest in age to me, and he had early onset dementia and Alzheimer's. And when he was first diagnosed was when my father was sick. And when he told me, I started to cry, and I was like, okay, but it doesn't mean, something terrible. And my husband said, for every long weekend, they lived in Philly. I was in New York. It's about a 2-hour drive. And we would spend long weekends there and he would say to me, look, there's going to come a time when he's not going to be this way. And I would be like, oh, stop. No, that's not going to happen. And they moved down here so that I could be closer. And my mother was here. And I watched the deterioration of my brother. Alzheimer's is a terrible, terrible disease. I call her my ex-sister-in-law because at the end she wasn't very good with my brother. And they went back to Philly and, he passed there way too young. And so it was always him and I with dealing with my parents, right? It was like, okay, you and I have to take care of it. And I always knew I had my ally. And then when he passed, my other brother, he's a great guy. I mean, so now he's my, go-to. I know, I'll say, okay, mom wants this, or what should we do about this? And I know he'll always be there. And his wife, my sister-in-law, will always be there. And then I have a younger brother. I mean, he's a younger brother. He's in his 50s. I mean, but
Still
he's never,
baby.
well, he is still the baby. Yes, he is. But he's never been married. He's never, so you would kind of, include him, but, you can't really count on him. So I do have at least my other brother, and he's wonderful. And he was with me with taking care of my dad because he lived like 10 minutes away from them. So I do have the support of, like, my mother, I'll start talking to her about, okay, in book 5, this is what's going to happen. And she'll say, why are you doing that? And I'm like, Mom, in a good series of books, and we're going back to the books, right?
Right.
I'll say, this is what's going to happen. And she's like, why are you doing that? And I said, because in a book, and especially in a series, there has to be the good with the bad, right? I write wonderful romance parts to the book, but then there are 2 antagonists, and then not everything is perfect. Life isn't perfect. And so I'm sticking a couple of things in there that will create chaos. And she's like, why do you want to create? I said, because in a good book, it can't be just about this great love affair. There's got to be things that happen to characters that are not good. It's got to ebb and flow. So she's like, oh, that's terrible. But my editor, when she read book 1, I would have these meetings with her and she would say, this is 2 books. And I said, okay, where are we going to cut it then? Where's, because it's got to be a cliffhanger. And we found the spot. So we did book 1 and book 2 to, book 1 happened and then book 2 was already being edited. And I do have to say, I have a wonderful editor who understands my story. So when she edits my book, she's not like slashing, like, now get rid of this. She will say, hey, why don't we frame it this way? Or, she'll put in she'll make something better. And I'm like, and I can refuse that change. But I'll say, okay, we'll do it that way. So I have a great relationship that she's not killing the story. And some editors will come in and just, like, no. And when you do that, you change the complex of the book.
I think is respect. It says a lot to the kind of relationship that you have. And, you mentioned earlier in the conversation that, everybody that you're working with considers themselves an A-team, right? So that is a compliment to you as the author, a compliment to the people that you have surrounded yourself with, because they want you to succeed as you, not what they think your story should be. Because if these books are a reflection of you in any capacity, they have to make sure that that is truly what the book is, as opposed to trying to superimpose what they want the book to be. So kudos to your editor for respecting you as not just a person, but also an author that reflects herself in the books that you're publishing. So that's really great.
Yeah, she's wonderful. And so when we got to book 2, right, she said to me, keep writing. She said, continue the story. And I said, okay. I said, I can. I said, I thought this was an end. And she said, no. She said, continue the story. So I said, all right. So book 3 and 4 were like together. And we talked about where book 3 and book 4 would be cut off. Now that I'm writing, I started book 5, and I actually had to move some of book 4 because it was so long into the beginning part of book 5. Now that I'm writing book 5, and I decided I'm just going to kind of continue the story into 5 and 6, because book 5 has about 180,000 words, and that is extremely long. A romance book usually is about 98,000 words. So I know I'm running long, and some of it will go into book 6, but the plan that I have for book 6 is going to have some really hard moments in it. So I'm willing to let 5 and 6 be a little bit longer. And I think that's going to be a discussion I have with them. And so, yes, they want me, my publishing consultant said, hey, I worked with this author and she gave me some tips, this woman, which was really nice. They do want the books to take off, and I believe that they will. And I think book 3 will be the turning point. And as I'm writing it, I wrote songs because they are a band, and every book has songs. And at the end of every book, there's a playlist, because there's certain songs that either the female character covers.
Okay.
And I'll just say one song that is an important song, not because they sing it, because it's brought up in the story, and it's Stevie Wonder's You Are the Sunshine of My Life.
You are the sunshine of my life.
And it's a very emotional thing for the female character, because it has to pertain to her parents. And her parents are, as the story goes on, her parents take a bigger role in the story, especially her mother and then her father. So
right
now when I hear that song, right, I just am like, and I start to cry because I relate it to the story. And it's like, yeah, it's about Franny and Mario.
So that is not a rock song. So how is the main character covering that song? Is the main character covering that song in its original form, or is she rockifying it?
Okay, she does. The song is related to a party.
Okay.
And her parents go on the dance floor. And that's the song that she sees her parents dancing to. And they're excellent dancers. And she's watching them. And so I'm giving you a little bit of the book.
Just don't give everything away. I love it.
No, I can give you a little bit of this. She watches her parents on the dance floor, and she turns to her man, and she starts to cry. And he's like, why are you crying? And she said, I don't think I've seen my parents that much in love, because they were dancing and the song meant so much to them that it made her cry.
It's crazy. It's such a man thing to ask. I mean, it's quite obvious. If I'm crying because I'm watching my parents dance, to a lovely love song, it goes without saying. For the fact that she has to explain it, it's like a perfect world of a man and a woman. They say men are from Mars and women are from Venus. So, very two different perspective of seeing, and great for you as an author for capturing that. I want to go back to something that you said a little earlier about running long, because I know some author, me included, we get bogged down by what fits the standards, right? We get bogged down by what, how many words? Yes. How many words should I write? Oh, it's too much. Maybe I need to cut back down. What are you using in that process where you feel like when the stuff is flowing and you're just writing and you're getting in the mood of just getting everything out? Whether it's over or not over, you just let it flow. Did you give yourself space to kind of like self-edit before the editor gets to it? Or you just let the editor just get to it and come up with the meat and potatoes of everything?
It's funny that you mentioned that, because now with the third book and having an editor and a proofreader, and as I said, they didn't destroy my book. So thank you for that. So now I know the certain things with editing. And so I took book 3, and it's like, I understand the formatting, and I understand that if you say, okay, you need to write that out. And if you deal with time, you don't put 12 o'clock, you have to spell that out. So yes, those are the standards, right? And once you know that, so I went back in book 3, and my editor always, and I did it free flowing, and she would say chapter break, chapter break, chapter break. So then I went back and I said, I am going to self-edit this because my editor is a lot of money and I know what she wants to charge me. So I said, maybe if I do some of this work, it won't be so bad. And I went back and I put on all the chapter breaks, every conversation. I made it, so I know what they were looking for. And I went back and I edit, but it didn't take anything out. Maybe I took out a line that was redundant because I said it in, 2 pages before. And I said, oh, I don't need to say this again. And I took it out. As far as word count, I already know that I'm way over and I don't care. And so right now, book 3 is done. I know it's going to go to my editor, but my marketing person, I said, it's done. I mean, it's ready to go. And I know I have to give it to my editor and my publishing consultant too. And the minute I give it to them, it's like, cha-ching, I got to pay them. So my marketing person said, let me look through it. And I said, okay, fine. So book 3 is done. I'm doing the self edits on book 4 as we speak, and then I'm going to go back to writing. And I'm just going to make it one long thing. And I might put that saying that, okay, this is book 6. But I know that I'm 180, 190,000 words in book 5. And where I wanted to end it, I'm getting very close. I'm like about 20 pages away from where I wanted the book to end because it will create chaos for book 6. And I know everything that I want to include in book 6. And I was in the beginning looking at the word count saying, oh my God. And now I'm like, no, I'm letting it flow. This is the way the story needs to be told. And I don't care. Like I can move a little bit, but if my book is 450 pages, I don't care because we're getting to what I think is the end of this series. And I can start, like, I already know the 3 stories have also been in my head for 25 years. So every now and then one of them jumps out and I say, no, not yet. You can't come out yet. And I think the next book probably won't be a series, but the book that comes after that and the 2 books that come after that will probably be a series because of the way the story.
Yeah. You weren't planning for the first book to be a series anyway. Your editor told you it was a series.
I know. And she told me to continue. So yeah, I continued and I keep continuing. So now it's funny because I live with these characters now and I'm living actually their life. it's a very weird kind of feeling that when I get into the story, I'm in it. I'm feeling everything they feel. I cry and I'm like, you're writing it, but when you reread it, my husband say, "What's the matter?" I'm like, "Oh my God, I just read this book. Oh my God." And it elicits that from me from writing it. I think that's good that
It is good.
that emotion came out. And it's funny that my mother has read the books and she said the one thing that I told you about her parents on the dance floor, my mother said, I cried because it is an emotional thing. She goes, "I cried when I read that." And I said, "Good." I said, you were supposed to cry. So I live with the characters and there is parts of my life that I put in those books. Things that happened to me, things that were said to me, things that I lived. And all through the books, I'm sprinkled in there. And I did a podcast. I take that back. You're the second female. I was driving to Austin because that last year I did a couple of book festivals. Now I'm trying to concentrate on romance conventions, which who knew there were such things, but there are. And thousands of women go to them and some of them are already booked up, but I'm being annoying and say, "Hey, I'm on the wait list, but I really want to." I do have 2 scheduled for the fall, but there are some that are happening in like April, June, July. And I'm really going to be that squeaky wheel saying, I want in. The book festivals were wonderful, but it's, all different types of books. It's not romance. And the romance genre, as you know, is huge. It's the biggest genre out there. So to go to a convention where everybody is looking for that romance novel, that's my audience. So I'm working hard on that. But when I was driving to Austin for the Texas Book Festival, which is huge, I had a podcast and I said to my husband, "Pull over at Starbucks." I said, I got to do this podcast via my phone. And she said, I know you're on the road. I said, no, let's just talk. I don't care how long it is. It's all right. So I have my husband and my miniature dachshund, because she has to come with us, in the car. And she asked me, she said, "I need to know. There's a scene in the book where the female's name is Gina." So, she says, "Gina does this thing." She said, "Is that fiction or did you really do that?" And I said, you want to know the real deal here. And I said, "Well, because you asked." And I always tell people, if you read the book and you want to know if something is me or is it fiction, I will tell you. So she asked me the question and she said, "Did you really do that?" And I said, "Yes, I did." And she was like, "Oh my, I can't, really? You did that?" I said, "Hell yes, I did." I said, don't encroach on my territory. And that's basically, what happened. And she was just like, "I have so many other questions, but I know you got to get." And we spent 90 minutes talking to each other and it was wonderful. And I always say, and I probably will put up a TikTok reel today. I used to do them all the time, but now it's just getting the book on. And I found that Threads is starting to be a very good social media platform. There's a lot of action. They have authors, they have romance authors, and you get into those communities and it's great. But the biggest thing is finding those Instagram influencers that have like 100,000 followers. They're hard to find. I always, whenever I do a TikTok reel, I said, if you're an influencer, get in touch with me because you have to pay them. So, that's the hard part, is always trying to get, and once you get that person and once you get that out there, then things start to happen. And for me, it's a slow burn, but I am getting my books out there. And I know that once people read them, they're like, "This is great. When is book 3 coming out?"
Yeah. For the influencer part, Beth, there are apps and platforms that are actually centered around that, where it's like an influencer market. Where you pitch a book and you know what you need from an influencer and they actually reach out to you. So you
I don't know about that.
yeah,
But
yeah, I know like at least 5 of them that are marketplace for influencers. Influencers are constantly looking for product to promote and people who have products that need influencers to promote them also, are on those platforms. Another place, not that I'm advertising TikTok, but here we go. Another side of TikTok that is helpful is like, what do they call it? The book TikTok side of TikTok, where
book talk.
book talk. Right.
And I've been trying to, and thank you. I know book talk is big and
It's huge.
I'm trying to find those people. So if you know a marketplace, tell me offline because I've
Yes.
been dying to get a book talk because here's the thing with book talk. I have Books a Million. I don't have Barnes and Noble, but it's the same thing. And I can't get my book in there because, the publishing houses pay
Right.
for all those tables and
Right.
stuff. My book you can get in Barnes and Noble, but you have to go to the information desk and say, I want to order this book. If enough people do that, they might consider putting my book on their shelf, but they're not going to do it. But Book Talk has a display and it's romance, rom-com, which I'm not rom-com, I'm more romance. And then the genre that I don't understand, and I know it's big, is the romantasy.
Fantasy, romantasy. Wow. We are getting places.
And so those are all indie authors that book talk, but they have a display. And that's where I need to be. So that's why I need a book talk influencer and then they'll say, okay, well, let's put her books on our display because whatever entity, puts those displays up and it's for indie authors. So I'm looking to get those. So if you know a marketplace offline, tell me because I've been trying to hit them up and that's where the marketing dollars
Well, I was going to suggest that let your marketing person, because you are the author, granted you're promoting your book. There is a reason why you have a marketing person I'm not a huge fan with cold messaging, but it does wonders, right? So it's just a matter of skimming through, social media platforms to see who's actually promoting a book, reading a book, and that is how hey, I have a book that I'd like for you to read so you can talk about it. It starts with one person and it snowballs from there. So you're taking on a lot and your marketing person should also be helping with that sort of a thing because there are people, I do know that influencers that are actually looking to promote books and that is the one place, especially with everybody's attention span being so short. There are ways to reach out to, the influencers to read your book and promote your book.
You'll have to tell me about that. My marketing person is wonderful. She does trailers.
Yes.
She's finding, these romance conventions, but it's the influencers and the woman that my publishing consultant, I talked to her and she said, my daughter does all my social media and she found these influencers where I go on my social media and I'll spend like maybe an hour and a half going through because some people message me and I'm a big person. If you message me, I want to answer you back pretty quickly. But her daughter found the influencers and, I'm not going to ask her. I can't ask my daughters to do that when they're working and they're willing to help with some things. But this woman's daughter just does all of her social media right now. Can't afford to pay somebody to do that because I am paying my marketing person. But when book 3 comes out, my publishing consultant needs to get paid. My editor needs to get her first installment. And we're talking like thousands and thousands of dollars. So I want those influencers and I'm willing to pay them. I just need to find them. And if there's a place where they're at, I need to know where they're at.
Absolutely.
Because I don't mind, if it's a good influencer. Say they have, I don't know, like, is it 500,000?
Yeah, you can see all of that with their social media. So that is the one thing about social media that it's great when it comes to influencer marketing, right? Because you can see their portfolio, you can see the influence they have because they're influencing, right? So you can see, you gain according to what you can, you're willing to invest at the time, because just like anybody else, it's supply and demand. Influencers with the highest amount of following are not going to charge you at a point where, say an influencer that has, say, between 2K to 5K followers, if somebody has 10K and above, they know they're sitting on top of the influencer food chain, right? They may charge you a little more. However, somebody that is building, their portfolio, reviewing, talking about a book, all of that stuff. And the platforms that I'm telling you about, most of them are paid platform. As an entrepreneur, being very mindful of budget and stuff like that, it may not be the first place to start. However, going on Book Talk and looking at those influencers that are actively reviewing books, right? And having them, read the book and review it. I think that is the best bet, because social media is free for the most part, right? And it takes getting that in. And once, you have book 1, book 2 reviewed, or book 3, now at this point, you are in a space where, with notoriety and people talking about your book and people knowing about your book, people will be reaching out to you to, ask if you can review the book, because maybe they've read the first 2 or the first 3. You're in the right direction and you're doing the right thing. That's the one place I would say anybody should look. Your marketer, if you're paying your marketer, let your marketer do that homework, where just look on Book Talk to see those influencers that are actively reading and reviewing books. It'll save you in the long run as opposed to paying to be on a platform. There's so many platforms, yeah. But there is a upfront cost to be able to get on. I wanted to know, so when you decided to write a book, so mom has done a great job raising her daughters, going through life, experiencing corporate world and all of that stuff, right? Being a
Right.
great daughter, being a great friend, the whole nine. And then one day you tell your daughters, guess what? I'm writing a book. And guess what? My first book is finished. What was that like? What was their reaction?
Okay, well, that is a good question, because they were like, okay, mom, okay. And then I would say, oh, my publishing consultant. And they're like, they're millennials. So they think they know everything, and they think they know everything about social media. And they will say, mom, you don't do that. And it's like, okay, well, they are looking at it from their standpoint. So before the book was actually published, I was reading them excerpts and I stopped. And they're like, why are you stopping? And I said, I don't feel comfortable reading you the next couple of pages. And they're like, well, why not? I said, well, it's a sex scene and I'm not going to read it to you. And they're like, we're old enough. And I said, yeah, I know, but as your mother, I don't want to read it to you. So when they got the book, they were like, what's going on in your head? And I've been very honest with them. And I said, I am, because I created a publishing company, which my publishing consultant said, you own everything, create your publishing company. So I did that. And I said, I want to eventually hand over this company to you guys. I want to give you a legacy. And they're like, yeah, okay, all right. And sometimes I'll tell them things that I'm doing with social media, and they're like, no, don't stop, don't do it. And I said, and then my marketing person says, I know they think they know everything, but they really don't. And mom has created a whole different persona, changed my hair. I went on a keto diet and lost a lot of weight. I've actually remade myself, and that has got them. They're like, you want to be a celebrity. That's why you do the podcast. That's why you want to be out there in the public. And I said, hell yes, I do. I said, what? That's what I'm trying to do. I said, I gave up my dreams for so many things and now I'm back. I'm even practicing my singing. I do like a 90-minute workout. I have gym equipment in my garage and I sometimes, I think today I didn't do 90 minutes, but I did like an hour, whatever. But I fit that in. And so Perfection Saga has a playlist. And so I listen to it. And, sometimes my voice is really good and sometimes it's not. And that's the way it goes with a lot of singers, Sometimes your voice is good, sometimes it's not. It's hard to be consistent sometimes. I've seen excerpts from certain bands that are touring and it's like, oh, the voice isn't good tonight. But it happens and it does.
I think it's important that you said that because I see some musicians get like criticism from their fan base. It's like every day is not going to be the same and the human body has a mind of its own. So it can, elevate you to, whatever, and then it can disappoint you. So it's great that you said that. Please, if you're listening, if your favorite musician gets on stage and they sound like a nail on the chalkboard, just be forgiving. It's okay. Maybe it's just not their day.
Because when they do these concerts, right, they're singing, and they're also partying. And sometimes when that happens, the voice just doesn't do what it wants, and it's live. And there's very few, and I did go to a concert. It was actually Lollapalooza, which used to be a big thing a couple of years ago. And I saw the band Incubus and loved their music. And when they performed live, I was like, I feel like I'm listening to the record. They were so good that I was like floored by that. And, when a band goes live, the songs change, maybe they add, or maybe somebody comes in and sings with them or whatever. So live is live. You just got to take what it is. And sometimes it's really good. Sometimes maybe the voice isn't there, but ticket prices are really expensive. So I know that the band tried to put the best product out there. Sometimes as somebody who I won't say I'm going to say a singer. And I can tell in the mornings when I start singing while I'm cleaning, it's like, okay, no, it's not. And then I can go in the garage and there's a thing that sometimes you have to open up your voice, right? And I'm singing low key while I'm cleaning, but then when I work out, I'm literally opening my voice and I'm letting it belt out. And sometimes that makes your voice better. That's the only way I can explain it. So daughters are not, my oldest daughter is just like, she won't even acknowledge, any of it. It's like, no, nope, not going there. And the other two are like, Mom, we think it's fantastic. You're publishing these books. And they're always like, I think that the people who are working for you aren't doing you. And I'm like, all right, like they think they know better, but they really don't. And I just let them say it. But the whole thing about being in the spotlight is one thing that everyone in my family, with the exception of my mother and probably my brother and my sister-in-law, I said, I believe my series, my editor and I talked about it. I said, I think that by the time we're done with this could be a series on Netflix or Apple, or because they're always looking for content. I said, the story is deep. The story has, the tentacles from the two main characters. I go into everybody else's story and then, you bring it back together. So there's a lot of nuances. So do I think somebody could pick it up? Absolutely. And I said, I want that to happen. And my daughters are like, we do not want to be in the public eye. We don't want to be part of it. So all my social media and my Facebook page was just, put pictures of the kids, and I had to scrub it because now it's a professional. I have two. I have my author page and I have my other page, which I use basically the same. I might add a few other things in there, but I had to hide all the family photos. I had to hide anything that was family related because none of them want to be recognized. And I do, and I hate saying this because I feel like I'm too young, but I do have an amazing granddaughter. My oldest daughter had a baby and it's a girl. So I said, good, you gave me such aggravation. Now you're gonna, but this baby is so good. And I go out they're in Portland, Oregon, and any chance that I can make an excuse to go there, I do. And she FaceTimes me and I said, she's not calling me grandma or any of that. So she calls me Gigi and my daughter's like, look, Gigi's on the phone and she'll wave to me. It's adorable. But I don't want any, my daughter doesn't want pictures of her. And my Facebook page is in professional mode and I just don't want to put that. They don't want to be there. And I said, if things take off, guys, I'm sorry. And they're like, but I think they will change
I
because
think they will. I think they will support you. I think it's a safety thing because let's be honest, putting yourself out there is inviting all kinds of things,
yes,
right?
yeah,
That is why people choose to just have a life of solitude in a sense where it takes a certain amount of grit and, not caring. And as a New Yorker to a New Yorker, I understand it takes,
you didn't tell me you're from New York. Come on now,
it
shame
takes,
on you. We
takes
got
a
to stick
certain amount
together.
of New York to say, you know what, kick rocks, bounce salt, right?
Yeah.
I'm doing this. But from a place of safety, I get it. I'm not somebody that puts my family on social media. That's because I'm a very private person other than, doing what I do here. So it invites all kinds of things and there are crazy people out there.
Okay.
Even celebrities, most celebrities hide their children or hide the faces of their children, especially when they're minors, right? So people that you invite all manner of things, criticism, negativity, and all kinds of things. So they love you. They want to support you from a safe distance.
Yes.
That may change, like you say, it may not change, but I think, kudos to you for scrubbing your Facebook page, respecting their request to be private while you focus on reinventing yourself. And kudos to you for reinventing yourself, right? This is what I tell people. It is never too late. If you have that thing on your spirit to do, it is going to nag you until you take your last breath. And for you, you just got tired in the shower. You're like, okay, since you're flowing through me, I'm going to put you on paper. And that is great because not everybody has that ability to say, you know what, this is it. I'm tired of hiding. I'm tired of putting my light under a bushel. I'm just tired of the fear of the unknown, the what ifs. I'm going to do this. Whatever happens is going to happen. So kudos to you for that. But your children, I respect your decision. And most people have that, they don't know where this is going. Is the fear of the unknown. Should you get a star in Hollywood Walk of Fame, would they show up? Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if mom makes the New York Times bestseller list and this story is made into, they'll be around.
Yes.
And I said to them, I would love to get to a place where I could hire you to do social media or do this or do that for me. But
They'll
I'm
come
not,
around, Beth. They'll come around. They'll come
I'm
around
not,
in their time. Yes. I
yeah,
know it as a mother, we want to leave a legacy for our children. We want our children to see the importance of the heart we're pouring into something. We want our children to have maybe half of the enthusiasm we have about something, but it doesn't always happen that way. I had to learn this, being a mother. A child will have you scream, yell, scold, blue in the face. Nothing changes. The one thing the children are paying attention to is your action, right? So it's going to get to a place where they'll come to you and say, okay, mom, what do you need help with? right? Keep that hope alive. You can't make them do it. They'll come to you when they're ready.
Yeah, no, they will. Just one thing that everybody's said to me is most authors do not want to, they don't like to do podcasts. They don't like to have their face out there. They don't want to talk. And I said, why not? Wouldn't you want to talk about your work? There's two aspects of it. Like you're the brand, right? Because you're the face behind the books. And then the books are the brand and you have to mesh them together, right with the criticism. Really, when I first started doing TikTok reels like a year ago, I got two people who were very crude and rude and I read it and then I deleted it. And I went on TikTok and I said, I know not everybody's going to like me and I'm okay with that. You have to say, not everybody's going to like me and I get that and that's okay. But do not be crude and rude. I will delete what you said because my space is about positivity. And yes, I'm trying to sell the books, but I'm positive and I appreciate people who follow me and I let them know that I appreciate that. But it's a space of positive. So if you can't be positive, then I will delete you off of whatever I'll delete your comment. What I found really interesting, and that's only happened to me twice. Most of the time, I really get positive feedback from people. But here's the thing that shocked me. I learned it on TikTok and then I'm noticing it on Threads and something else where I didn't know that they were dating sites because I get a lot of gentlemen who message me and some say, are you looking for a sugar daddy? And I'm like, what? And so, I have to delete those things. I have to delete them.
Wait, Beth, where? On TikTok?
TikTok. And it started on TikTok and then Threads became, and so I think there's somebody who's sending me pornographic stuff.
They do that. They do that.
And obviously I don't look at it and I could tell. And I'm like, no, delete. How did you get on my thing? I don't like it. So everybody's been very positive. And if you go on Threads in these writing communities like authors and stuff, there are people who are always saying, put your book covers up and I'll promote you. And so there's a lot of authors promoting each other, which I think is fabulous. And I, in kind, will do the same. But it's great. But what is your reach? I mean, some of these people, might have only 200, 500 followers. Do I appreciate it? Yes. But I'm looking for the bigger ones. And the other thing that's starting to happen, and I'm sure you're aware of it, once they see you, okay, once they know this woman's got 2 books out and she's putting it up there, all these marketing people now hit you up.
Everybody's trying to sell something. That's the thing about you have to have the patience to ignore things, respond politely, or decline. Everybody's trying, even the people propositioning you for a date or sugar daddy and all this kind of stuff. There's a market for everything, right? So that is the thing with the media. Yeah, it's a market for everything. So, with those things, you keep blocking and deleting them because that's not what you're there for. It's a very different generation, which is a question that I wanted to ask you. It's a very, very different time, right? How is it like, tell us about growing up in the rock and roll era in New York City, right?
Okay.
Because there's a certain life force that era holds or held.
Yes.
Even I wasn't born, I am a millennial. I wasn't born in the rock and roll, the heat of the rock and roll era. However, for some reason, my soul is from that time because, any rock and roll band is basically what gets me to the point that my obsession with Queen.
Oh, I have a story for Queen.
I want to hear it.
Oh.
My obsession with Queen was so heightened during my last pregnancy that is all I listened to.
Well, you pick good music.
And even my 4-year-old knows a lot of the songs now.
Yeah. See, good. You're trained. You see, you have to do that. You have to do that.
So please tell us about that, because I
I will.
absolutely love rock and roll. I love.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you my Queen story first.
Okay.
So high school, my two girlfriends, and we were into David Bowie and, Lou Reed and Roxy Music. And there was a band, Mott the Hoople, and we love Mott the Hoople. So Mott the Hoople was in concert, and the opening act was this band called Queen, right? Don't know him. So there we are. And I won't say we were very well prepared for the concert. And we watched, and it was Freddie Mercury when he wore that white thing that went up like that. He was wearing that. And we were looking at each other going, who's this band? They're really good. And when we left, when the concert was over, I said, Mott the Hoople played their two famous songs, but that band Queen was phenomenal. And so we saw them when they first came to the United States, and they were fantastic. They really were. Since you are a Queen fan, I want to ask you, because somebody asked me this in podcast, and I did watch the biopic that was on Queen. Now, I've also watched a documentary that was the real story. And you and I both know the real story. And Freddie Mercury, as wonderful as he was, did a lot of things to put him in a position where he got AIDS. And, it was gritty. It was hard. It was, what Freddie did. And the biopic just glossed over that whole thing, which, I guess maybe they did that because they wanted the masses people to see it. But I felt like you're not really telling the true story of Freddie Mercury. So I wasn't enamored with that. I wanted to see what you felt as a Queen fan. How did you feel about it?
This is always what happens with Hollywood and movies about a person's life. Expect some level of glamorization and glossing over and, omission of things, because the purpose of a movie is to highlight the good stuff, right? If you want a biopic will give you raw. If you want a documentary on the person, you will get everything. You're actively seeking that out. However, when the box office is involved, when a certain budget was allocated to something to be completed, expect, lipstick.
Yeah.
Regardless of how big, ugly, little that pig is, there's always going to be a lipstick on it. And I think that is the disappointment that true fans who know a history experience when, things go to the box office or things get turned into movies. If you go in with the idea that, okay, this is going to be glamorized, this is going to be as fashion forward and as palatable as possible.
That's the word.
Exactly. Yes. I expected it to be, I don't want to use the term watered down. I expected it not to be the full shebang.
Okay. You went in.
I went in with no expectation whatsoever. I just wanted to see Freddie's story. I just wanted Freddie's story in the Hollywood way, the movie way. I wanted to see how everything was going to be portrayed. I didn't go there with the intention of, okay, I'm going to get the full story, right? So I think that's where the disappointment comes in. When you know the story, when you've seen a biopic, when you've seen a documentary of sort, for you lived through that time, right? You knew the story as it was unraveling. However, I've come to know the story. So for you know what happened. You were entrenched in that, baptized even, right? So I can see the disappointment. Right. But, if I speak to any fan of anybody, be it a movie star, a musician, a philanthropist, whoever it is, right? If you know the story, you know the story. When you see anything is turning into a movie, expect that palatable for everybody touch to it. And when you go in with that mindset, you won't be disappointed. You're like, I expected it. So, yeah.
That's a good way of looking at it, because, and I'm going to relate it back to my books in a minute. My daughter and I went to Alamo movie theater where they serve you the food and everything. And we went to see Amy Winehouse had died and we were big fans. And I remember she called me and I pulled off the side of the road and started to cry. And we went to see her documentary and we left there bawling our eyes. And, we're just like, why, Amy, why? And they did a biopic and I had a friend say to me, don't go. Because they made it all about the boyfriend and not about all the other things that were true to Amy Winehouse. So I said, no, not going to see it. But when you say how Hollywood, right? When I had my discussion with my editor, when she was like, okay, 2 books, you're going to write the 3rd and 4th and, continue on. I said, Maggie, I think this could be a series. And she said, yes. And I said, but if that happens, if anybody would ask, I said, I'm writing the screenplay and I want you to write it with me because I do not want anybody to change my story because now, and I've seen that I've read a couple, Leanne Moriarty read a lot of her books and even Daisy Jones and the Six. I read those books and I watched the series or whatever, and they changed the story because they had to make certain characters fit certain things. And I was like extremely disappointed. I'm like, that character was not gay in the book. Then why did you make that character gay? And so I'm just like, no, in my books, and it's organic. Okay. Like I said, it flows for me. So it was organic. I didn't feel I needed to put a stereotype thing. There is a gay character in my story. He was always gay. That was his role. Gina's cousin, who she loves, it's like a brother. He's biracial. I mean, and that was always the way I saw my characters. So I'm not trying to conform to something to make it, all nice and I'm getting everything. No, these were the characters as I saw them. And I don't want somebody to change it because it changes the character. And the character is important the way they're written.
Beth, I see your heart, but this is something that happens quite a bit. Even J.K. Rowling's, her Harry Potter series, the books are not the same as the movies. There's certain things that are changed to fit. Again, we're talking about a movie. We're talking about sponsorship. We're talking about financial investment. We're talking about, shooting, directing, all of that extra stuff, right? It's like the world of entrepreneurship. There is a call to be flexible. Right? There is a call to be coachable, redirect. Granted, if you do want, which I am waiting to have this happen for you, have your book be picked up by a major network, be, for movies or variety show, or, be turned into a series or whatever it is, just be prepared that it may not be as you've originally written it. The main characters, however, may remain that way. If that is your hill to die on, let that be your hill to die on, right? Yeah, okay. Other things can change around them, but if your characters have a certain identity because you want them to remain in that identity, right? Let that be your hill to die on, right? However, you have to also keep in mind that there may be a need for concession somewhere else, right?
I'm willing to concede on little things.
All right. So just, have that expectation not expectation in a sense, but have that in mind going in, right? So when this gets picked up and it's turned into a series, it's turned into a movie, it's turned into whatever, this is my hill to die on. My characters must remain the same. These are the characters that I don't care what you do with the rest of them. These have to be maintained in this format because this is how I see them. This is how they roll into the other books, and it will be great to preserve them as they are.
Yeah,
So
no, then there's a whole cultural thing.
that's why it's important to preserve them the way they are.
Yes.
When you look at the Italian culture, even Sicily's proximity to Africa, right? So with the biracial character, right? There may be injection of other family members that are Italian, but are a darker skin tone. If you want to do that, I guess, if that works for you, that works for you. If that doesn't work for you, like, you're not quite, I see like a clear biracial, whatever, and you can talk about that. So it all begs for conversation, to be honest with you. And if your story is, or your stories are compelling enough to attract interest, right, from a producer or a TV network or whatever network, keeping the original characters the way they are, I think, is something that most companies will respect. You just decide what your hill to die on is. Make that very clear right now. So by the time that you're faced with key decision makers, you're not intimidated to cave.
Yeah.
Based on the story, based on the series, this is the cultural aspect of things. This is how I like for them to be preserved. This is how I like for them to be presented, because again, this is what it is. And it begs for negotiation going back and forth. Just like your editor respected you enough to keep your story original the way that you wrote it, however, still making edits to it. It's the same way that anybody who's compelled enough by your story, love your story, wants your story on a bigger stage, will do with your input, because at the end of the day, they're your books, they're your stories, right? What concession are you willing to make? I think making the decision earlier enough, because again, that is your vision, that is where you're seeing things, and the universe has a way of aligning things when you actually position yourself. So you're positioning yourself for this to happen. Start now in making those strict.
Thanks for tuning in to Abeg Vex Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. It really helps us out. We'd love to hear your thoughts and continue the discussion. So join us on social media or drop us a message. Until next time, keep exploring, stay curious, and keep pushing the boundaries of your world.